I'm gonna show you something beautiful.
Hello and welcome to another video by me. This one is going to be a little different maybe and a little bit more interesting, I think. Let me start by saying that I'm a big fan of Dave Cullen. He's one of the many people that I watch his videos often, and he's one of the people that's inspired me to do my own videos. In fact, I think this is the first time I've disagreed with him. When I seen he was going to be talking about the whole Gab, censorship, free speech thing, I thought he was going to take the same stance as me, which is that Gab shouldn't have censored the person that they censored. But we'll get all into that in this video.
All right then, on to story number 2. And this is where it gets exciting because this is blown up in a way that I did not think it would. So Andrew Torba published an article, it was yesterday. We are at war for a free and open internet. Andrew Torba of Gab.ai, the free speech Twitter alternative. And basically, they are under attack from, as we expected, their hosting provider, which is AsiaRegistry.com, owned by Instra Corporation. Their legal team contacted Andrew and basically said that last week we received a formal complaint relating to an image and content visible on Gab.ai. Please find the link below relating to the content that has been reported. It is a link on Gab to an account owned by Andrew Anglin of course, the Daily Stormer.
All right, before we go any farther, if you're like me, you probably don't know who this Andrew Anglin is. And so here is a little bit about him that I got from Wikipedia. And I will have a link to the Daily Stormer Wikipedia down below, which is where I got this information from. But apparently he's a white supremacist, so he's a shitty person with probably shitty opinions and shitty thoughts and beliefs and all of that.
And there's a particular post there that they say, as per our abuse policy, we ask that you remove any images and content that are in violation of our policies within the next 48 hours. So it's a very short window that you have to reply within. And again, these are the terms of service for the hosting provider, not for Gab.
I just want to take a second here to point out how sick I am getting about this whole terms of service bullshit. It seems like it's become the new buzz term for companies or websites or domain services, whatever, as some kind of excuse to shut people's opinions, thoughts, beliefs, speech down. And it's bullshit. It's just fucking bullshit. I'm fucking tired of it. Like, what's next? Like, if a domain service can stop a website, supposedly, from allowing free speech to be a thing because of their terms of service, where does that end? I mean, like, Dave, later in this video, talks about how Gab is going to look for a different domain service or build their own or whatever, and who knows how that's going to work out. But seriously, if all these sites, all these businesses, and whoever else keeps going with this whole terms of service thing, where does anyone have left to turn?
Once you have removed the offending content, very disturbing, please confirm by replying to this email so we can close this investigation. Now, I am not going to condone anything that Andrew Anglin is going to come out with, but the point of the fact of the matter is we have to also have free speech for the unpopular stuff and the things that we don't like.
So far, I totally agree with Dave. We have to have freedom of speech for everyone, even if their opinions and beliefs are things we don't agree with. Here's the post that was on Gab from Andrew Anglin. I find it kind of convenient that Dave never showed this in his video. I'm not exactly sure why he didn't. There is no reason not to, other than I guess he could say that he couldn't find it, but if I could find it, I'm pretty sure he could have found it. Anyway, as you can see, that there's nothing at all a big deal about this post. There's nothing about violence or anything like that in it. I mean, if anything, it just makes a crude joke.
Now, here's the thing. There are some terms of service, obvious terms of service on Gab and indeed on Minds that make a lot of sense. So, no doxing, no child porn, no calls for violence, as in death threats against people. And I think that we can live with those rules. They're very hard and fast rules. They make sense. They're not nebulous like bullshit hate speech rules that we see on the likes of YouTube and other places. So this kind of content is, there's plenty of content that you can find that violates the terms of service of most hosting providers on the likes of Twitter and Facebook and all the mainstream big social, and yet nothing is done about it. It is only the likes of Gab that gets squeezed.
Okay, But why this? Why now? Surely Gab has had things on it before this that have violated some terms of service somewhere along the line. I mean, this post was mild, to say the least. So why is this where the domain provider decided to draw a line and force Gab to make a decision to censor their social media? Why not before? There had to have been something else that was somewhere along the line in their eyes worse at violating their terms of service.
What was Andrew Torba to do? Well, obviously this is something that had to be acted upon fast, and I believe the image was in violation of the not suitable for work policy, which it should have been marked #NSFW. And that probably would have been okay. Now, it wouldn't have been in violation of community guidelines at Gab, but unfortunately it is in violation at the hosting provider. And that's the problem.
Hold on right there, Dave, because I'm going to have to call some Matt Christensen fake news on you.
You are fake news.
Because you're literally showing a picture of Gab saying that it is part of their community guidelines. So saying that it wasn't theirs is complete bullshit. Here's the same picture that Dave is showing with the one caveat of a paragraph that he conveniently cut out from above. Upon looking at their guidelines, this is Gab talking about Asia Registry, we reviewed the post in question to determine if it had broken our, Gab's, community guidelines. Our guidelines are very clear about properly tagging content that is not safe for work. Gab follows the Stewart standard, blah blah blah, versus Ohio on its porno, obscene content. We believe the post in question was indeed obscene. It should have been marked NSFW, not suitable for work, and it was not. Therefore, it was in violation of our, Gab's, community guidelines. Now, what Gab's community guidelines says about legal porn is that legal porn is permitted so long as the user clearly marks the content as NSFW, not suitable for work. The NSFW tag can be applied to individual pieces of content as well as entire user accounts. By default, NSFW content is hidden. Users can opt in to view NSFW content in their profile setting. Any porno content that is not marked NSFW is subject to removal or to have the NSFW tag being added to the content or account. Users can flag content that is not marked NSFW using our Gab's flagging system. Gab follows the Stewart, and then more about the whole Stewart standard Ohio thing, on what constitute porn and obscene content. Also, in the community guidelines, they talk about how they enforce their guidelines. Gab treats all people with respect, dignity, regardless of their background, origins, blah, 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 blah. We give the users full benefit of the doubt and work to communicate with them when enforcing guidelines and other rules. We enforce our guidelines in many ways, including but not limited to reminding you to kindly follow our community guidelines, terms, privacy, and end-user license agreement in the event a breach has occurred beyond a reasonable doubt. A breach, obviously, of some kind, I assume hacking of some type or doxing or something. I'm not really just sure exactly why they have it worded that way. Adding NSW tags to all pornographic, debauched, blah, blah, blah videos and or image content. The immediate expiration of any and all illegal content. The intermittent, temporary, permanent suspension of accounts, or an outright expulsion from Gab and its service. So what I gather from these two pieces of information in their community guidelines is, one, this post apparently by their Gab's terms of service or community guidelines should have had an NSFW tag and didn't, but also it could have been added to it. So being that I've read their community guidelines and I have also read Asia Registry's terms of service, which does not at all mention anything about not suitable for work, hashtags or tags or anything like that, I gotta kind of call bullshit on this whole thing from Gab. I don't want to say that they're lying to us. I mean, I gotta say it seems pretty clear that they did have their domain service provider come to them, but looking at the terms of service of their domain provider and going by what Gab themselves have in their community guidelines. This seems like it comes completely from Gab themselves. And the fact that it even says in their community guidelines that the tag could have been added to it. Also, how they handle their guidelines of saying that they like to communicate with the people when enforcing guidelines and other rules, yet they didn't do that here. They just simply replied to this Andrew Anglin's post saying, hey, delete this, or we will. And they did. That's not communicating with your people. That's not giving them the benefit of the doubt.
So what Andrew Torba did was a practical, strategic, calculated decision, I believe. And he received a lot of criticism from some people on Gab, which was ridiculous. He's called them right-wing snowflakes. Yes, they do exist, some of them indeed.
First of all, I want to point out that Dave right now is admitting that these people are criticizing Gab and Andrew from Gab. And he's calling them snowflakes. That's kind of interesting. Someone that makes videos criticizing people is referring to people criticizing someone as snowflakes. If that's not hypocritical, I don't know what is. But he is right. There are conservative snowflakes out there. For example, back when Laura Loomer got up and interrupted the stage play of the Caesar play that was spoofing Donald Trump. That is what I would call a conservative SJW. However, what these people are doing, this isn't snowflake stuff. This isn't people being offended. Okay, this is about Gab, who's known for their belief, their moral standpoint of freedom of speech being very important. Censoring someone for simply not putting some bullshit, not suitable for work hashtag on their post, which in their own guidelines says that can be added if it isn't added already. But instead of doing that, they censored the person and deleted their post. People criticizing Gab for this have all the right in the world because of how Gab has portrayed themselves about freedom of speech. That is where this comes down to. It's about the freedom of speech and the fact that Gab has entered into the ranks as Twitter and Facebook and Google and has censored someone. Something worth criticizing them for.
It had to be done. Over a year's work would have been gone down the toilet if they hadn't. So what he did was he removed the post. Now some people flipped their shit. And they said, how could you do this? You're a free speech social network. Why didn't you stand up? Who are you going to stand up for?
Who are they going to stand up for? Gee, I don't know, Dave. Maybe the people that have come to Gab because their quote-unquote wrong think has got them banned and suspended from other websites that censor them for it? Maybe that's who they should stand up for. Maybe they should stand up for themselves. Seeing they have this moral high ground of freedom of speech is so important that they will not take away anyone's right to their thoughts, beliefs, and opinions. Maybe that's who they should fight for.
Who are you going to stand up to exactly? Right? The domain hosting provider has you by the balls. It is extortion. This is a shakedown. What was he supposed to do if he had not complied and stood on principle, which is what some people seem to want? What do you think that would have accomplished? It would have achieved exactly what the elites and the mainstream media want to achieve, which is to say Gab would have been gone like that. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether he would have thrown himself on the sword and said, that's it, no way, free speech, absolute. I am not censoring anyone. I am not, falling prey to this attack. We are not, we're not censoring any of our users. We are going to continue. And the site would have been gone within a couple of days. Gab would be gone. The domain itself would have been seized so that gab.ai would have been taken by somebody else, right? All that work would have, all the users, all your followers, everyone, everything that you've posted, everything you've done on Gab would be gone.
That would have been horrific. Don't get me wrong. Everyone losing all their stuff, their profile and everything, their posts, that would have been bad. But sometimes some things are worth losing. It's like what Captain America said. Doesn't matter what the press says and the haters, and I'm totally misquoting him here. It doesn't matter what any of them say. Sometimes you just gotta plant yourself like a tree next to the river of truth, and when they tell you to move, you say no, you move. Now Gab, as they tweeted to me, made an assumption that I don't know what it's like to have a business and to lose it, or even be in fear of losing it. And to that I say, fuck you, Gab. However, I guess it depends on where you stand morally with the things that you believe in. To me, I would have had a lot more respect for Gab if Andrew would have fell on the sword and said, no way, free speech, absolute. But he didn't. He caved right away. First time at all. He didn't even fucking fight against them. He didn't even try to appeal it or anything. He just simply went and deleted it. And again, let me point out, from Gab's community guidelines, admitted by Gab that they did this.
Andrew would have no means of communicating with anybody anymore.
I gotta call a little bit of a bullshit there. They would have been able to communicate. They had 48 hours, and in that 48 hours, they could have said, look, we're not gonna stand for this, so we're gonna lose Gab. Or they could have said, look, we're not gonna stand for this, and we're gonna fight it, we're gonna appeal it, and if that doesn't work, we're gonna lose Gab. And they obviously have no problem using Twitter. They could have let everyone know what was going on through Twitter and probably other ways. I mean, there's the internet. They could have probably made a video, put it on YouTube or something maybe. Saying that they had no way to communicate with us is just kind of bullshit.
He had to play a game. Long term, he knows that this, and he says it here, he knows that this is not the long-term strategy, because otherwise the free speech social network that Gab is cannot control its own destiny. And it has to self-censor, and it has to do so at the whim of another entity. So it can't be a true free speech social network. So what he has done, and what he's publicly said, though he wishes he had handled the situation a little better and communicated to people a little better, what he has decided to do is look for an alternative hosting company somewhere else, perhaps in another country, and then start building onto the blockchain and other places. It is the only way. He had to do this now. So it is, to those people who flipped out, it is short-term pain for long-term gain.
This is just bullshit. You're just making excuses for Gab. You're apologizing for Gab. It's pretty fucking sad and pathetic coming from someone that constantly makes videos about free speech and such.
Okay, Andrew Anglin will probably be able to come back on Gab at a later point once this is resolved. But for the short term, this had to happen. Look, any strategy, video game strategy players out there know that, you know, when it comes to warfare, it's like this is why I always compare it to chess.
I love this whole thing about it's a war and we're a civil war and shit. It's so fucking stupid. I love how Dave's talking about strategy games. Yeah, Dave, it's totally like chess. If your strategy in chess is to sit down across from your opponent and the first thing you do is knock your king over.
Okay, so it's a move, counter move, it's a strategy, and sometimes you have to have a poison pawn, which is a sacrificial lamb, in order to enact your next move. Look, it's a battle lost, but it's not the war.
Sacrificial lamb. It's a battle lost, but it's not the war. Wow. Holy shit. Good to know that that's what Gab sees its users as their sacrificial lamb. Because no. Gab wasn't the sacrificial lamb. They would have been the sacrificial lamb if they would have fell on the sword, as you said, and not deleted the post and lost everything. That would have made Gab the sacrificial lamb. No, instead they censored someone and made that person the sacrificial lamb so they could keep going. So they didn't lose all their revenue and money and their domain. Battle lost, but not the war. They didn't lose a battle. They gave up. They gave in.
And this is the reason why all of this stuff has to happen. Gab would have been gone. This move, ultimately, the takeaway here is that it has bought Gab time. You have to be practical. There is nothing to gain from Gab going down right now.
Why'd you say it like that? There's nothing to gain from them to go down right now. Are you implying that there's something to gain from them going down later?
that this cannot continue.
You're right about that. It can't continue. It sucks to see Gab fall in line and join the ranks of Google and Twitter and Facebook. But it's like Harvey Dent said.
You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Thank you everyone for watching. Leave your comments below. Tell me what you think. Do you agree with me? Do you agree with Dave? Do you agree with Gab? Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.
There are no strings